All right. I have one of my early on mentors in the nutritional space, Andrea. Thanks for coming on the show and talking about our passion, our purpose, your mission, and how we are just on a roll to really be fit and healthy from the inside out as we age. So I'm so happy to connect with you.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm so excited to be here with you and your community.
Yeah, well, as I said before we hit record, you were always an inspiration to me. I got into nutritional therapy. Oh, I think it was about 2010. I got into more of this functional medicine space, and I was in Seattle at the time. I moved to North San Diego a few years ago, and you were always such inspiration in
Mm.
educating others and making it so simple. So
Mm.
tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Yeah, thank you. I love that we got to intersect in that way. My journey into nutrition started a long time ago when my late husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor. That was in April of 2000 when I was just 7 weeks pregnant. And I already was a real foodie, but that really catapulted my interest in what we now call food as medicine, and just seeing what was possible to support his body while he was going through treatment, really aggressive treatment, when he was given such a detrimental and short prognosis of 6 months, helping my own body. So, really turning to what is possible when we lean into more lifestyle practices, food and dietary and lifestyle modification. It wasn't until after he passed away, and that was 2.5 years later. So, he was given 6 months, he lived 2.5 years, that I really realized this was my calling. I put myself back through years and years and years of school to reshape myself and remake a career. I worked in book publishing prior, and feel really fortunate for having built a practice that was successful, then having people coming to me asking about that success, starting what I thought would be a small mentorship group that turned into an entire school where I've now trained nearly 9,000 practitioners in the methodologies that I've really evolved over time that are very adjacent to the realm of functional medicine. So my work continues to evolve as well, but that's the kind of intro into the field of functional nutrition.
What is functional nutrition? Just summarize that. But what would you say your definition is
Yeah, well,
now?
I love talking about this because there can be a lot of confusion, and I do like to break it down. So, in its simplest form, I always say we want the body to be as functional as it can possibly be. And that functional nutrition is where food meets physiology. So, what food does in your body versus nutrition science, which is more about what food does outside the body. If we study coffee or red wine or broccoli or ultra processed foods, we could talk about what that means external to the body. When it becomes functional, we're talking about your body. And the three primary tenets of a truly functional practice, and this is really my jump off point from all that I learned from the Institute of Functional Medicine, are these three primary tenets that I fear we've gotten far away from in the realm of functional medicine and functional nutrition. And those three tenets are: number one, there is always a therapeutic partnership. That means there's two experts in the room, the patient, the provider. You both bring your expertise. There's something your provider will never be an expert in, and that is you. And so, really making room for both of those, that expertise in the room. So, therapeutic partnership, tenet number one. Tenet number two is we look for the root causes. And I want to underscore the S there. I'm not talking about root cause. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding these days where people are looking for the one thing. If I do do that one test or I get that one label, that's going to make everything better. And we are seeing more and more that that's not the case. Things that we're experiencing that are chronic tend to be multifactorial. So we need a different way to look at them. So therapeutic partnership, root causes. The third tenet is a systems-based approach. And of course, my program is called Full Body Systems. It's based on systems biology. Break that down. We know the gut's connected to the brain. That's common knowledge these days. We know the hormones are connected to detoxification, which is connected to the gut. We know these interconnections more intricately these days. That's systems biology. But I'm also a systems thinker. And so for me, the systems-based approach has both to do with the systems biology and the systems thinking. How do we think into the impossible, into the complicated? What are the structures that help us to really bring attention in the way that's going to be the most supportive?
Yeah, I love that. I don't know, maybe I got it from you early in the days, but it's so much of it I find interesting when people say, I eat healthy.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? And
Yes.
really looking at it's not just what you eat, but how you eat and how you
Yes.
break your food down, as you talk about. And I know the digestion course and really working on, north to south and
Yes.
how the body works in the systems and order of operations. I always like to think, what needs to happen first for this next step to happen. There's all the systems that we go into to get that nutrition from our food.
Absolutely. And I think, like you're saying, there can be a lot of confusion about what's right or wrong, what's good or bad, what are we labeling as appropriate. And it is really individualized because all of our digestive systems function differently. I'm just going to make a note here. This is a really good point of thinking about continuous glucose monitors, which are all the rage these days. And I think there's a time and a place for them. But what's getting mistaken in popular media is people are fixating on what that food does in their body. That food in your body does not live in isolation. You had that night's sleep, that day's stress, so many other factors, that day's hydration, whether you worked out or not. And so when we look at data in isolation, we're missing the opportunity to think functionally, which embraces that systems biology, understanding that we are much more complicated than just one data point.
And as I study more and learn from clients, is the role of the vagus nerve and how that's so important. As you mentioned, the gut brain connection. What have you discovered on your journey of the connection of digestion and breaking our food down, absorption and body systems working?
Yeah.
The role of the vagus nerve.
Well, first of all, the breakdown of the food is everything. As you know from the digestive intensive, we are not what we eat. We are what our body can do with what we eat. And we all do something similar, but with differentiation based on the function of our systems. And the vagal nerve and the vagal tone are very important, especially when we're under a lot of stress. Just thinking about how that biggest nerve in the body is impacted. It's the biggest connection between the gut and the brain. But I always like to remind folks that we cannot heal in a sympathetic dominant state. So coming into the rest and digest, which we can do by supporting vagal tone, really does help us to optimize all body systems. So remember, again, like if you take nothing away from this conversation, but this, the body cannot heal in a sympathetic dominant fight or flight state. We need to be in rest and digest in order to heal. And by that, I don't just mean the stress from work or your family. Sometimes that's the stress of like seeking the fix, trying to find the answer, always being on overdrive to look outside of us for the one pill, the one protocol, the one workout, the thing that's going to make everything better. That is a fight or flight state that a lot of people that are health attuned are actually stuck in.
I'm laughing because that is my background. What happened to me, I wrote a book about it to help myself more so than others, to help others with my own journey of, I called it Life is Not a Race, It is a Journey. And us high performers that take everything and think, okay, that's great. I'm going to do this more and have the mission, more is better. And we overdo everything as
Yes.
athletes and endurance competitors, as I did triathlons, Ironmans, and marathons. And it just, we think I'm so healthy, is why we talk on the podcast about being fit and healthy from the inside out, and how doing too much of everything can also contribute to that stress beaker of overdoing everything, contributing to your metabolic chaos.
1,000%. I'm so glad you're bringing that message forward. It's so important. And I think, especially for women and as we age, it's important to recognize where there are different seasons of life and where we need to recognize and acknowledge and embrace those different seasons, which becomes a little scale for each of us in terms of where do I strive, because I am also a perpetual striver, and where do I rest, and finding that different times in our life are going to need a different equation or a different weight there, and different days of our life might need something different. And how do we tune in to be able to honor what our body's needs are?
Well, it's being high performer, how they feel that they're doing everything right, and then they come to me or other practitioners that focus on this area that really what's going on is you're doing too much of everything, and how they
Yes.
come with that list of supplements. I do the aura, I do the CGM, I do the cold plunge, I do the sauna. It's like, all right, let's take everything and edit and reformulate your programs, because you might just be doing a little too much of everything.
Yeah, you
And
know what I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I sit in this place of balance and, also aging and looking at longevity and all the longevity science, and thinking about the tension between the tools of optimization and the tools of stabilization. And I think oftentimes we get stuck in looking for the tools for optimization when we're not in a place of stabilization. And those are very different tools, they're very different tests. It doesn't mean that we can't use those things. I do caution about using them at the wrong time. I think it's a waste of money. It's confusing. It tells us stories about ourselves that might not actually be applicable. But being able to figure out where it's time to tune in to the information versus tuning out to a number of data points that are telling us something about ourselves and for which we don't always have the context.
yeah, well, it's going back to teaching people feel yourself, like being
Yes.
that intuitive healing, and how does food make me feel, and not
Yes.
having to look at all this data. I learned that years ago as a personal trainer, as my original career, and how many clients are not able to connect. Where do you feel that exercise?
Totally.
What do you feel? I don't know. It's like, and I think that so much of it is, as we go on and depend on these external devices, that we forget to, like, oh, let's check in and do my own body scan and see how I feel.
Yes. Very good point.
So the next question I was thinking about is how symptoms can become roadmaps, not roadblocks. Talk a
Mm,
little bit about that. And
yeah.
before you go, I do want to throw in this frustration I just heard last night from my mom, that a family friend's daughter, this is just tying into the story of what we're talking about. She just had a, she's 40 something years old. The doctors just did a 10-hour surgery, a hysterectomy, and had a mastectomy. And now they just told her she needs to get her gallbladder taken out. And I
Mm,
think, like, how the functional medicine and your direction of figuring out what's going on, and how many people don't pay attention, as we said,
mhm.
to intuition and red flags that come on for years. We override and push through that. But I just wanted to share that because it's been driving me nuts all day. How that
Yeah,
ties
yeah.
together.
Totally. Very, painful, these stories that we hear. And I do think we've really farmed out our agency to gurus, influencers, tests, wearables, like all of these things, we've lost our way with that tune in, whether it's intuition or rebuilding intuition. So we were kind of just talking about this. I think it's a really good bridge in terms of where our signs, our symptoms, our diagnoses can be telling us something. I have a Siamese cat here who's trying to snuggle me. But I think that this is really an art that we can embrace. So one of the simple ways that I really like to work on this with people, and this is something everybody can do, it's one of my 3 principles around food, because I do not subscribe to any one dietary theory. It's very individualized. There's 3 principles. One of those principles is to know your yes, no, maybe list, and to be able to talk about that with a provider like yourself. So some people are going to say, I don't feel anything when I eat food. I don't know what you're talking about. But you know what? I'm always in pain. My knees always hurt. My back always hurts. I get migraines. I'm having hot flashes, whatever it might be. So there's a disconnection there that we're not having, that's not relating, not in a causative way, but even in a correlative way. When I feel myself this way, I feel this way. That kind of tuning in that we can have. On the other end of this extreme, there are people who develop conditioned food hypersensitivity, where they aren't getting better and they're attributing everything causatively to food, and they're hyper indexing on, I can't eat that, I can't eat that, I can't eat that, I can't eat that, I never feel good. And in that situation, we really do need a helping hand to do the healing internally, so that the body can eat a diet that is as diverse as possible for that individual at that time. Gonna change. There might be seasons, things will change, but ideally we want more diversity, not less. So in our clinic, we've seen people coming in eating just 3 foods and they still don't feel good. But having such a limited diet means we're introducing new deficiencies into the system, and those new deficiencies are causing their own signs and symptoms. So signs and symptoms and our diagnoses can be teachers, but sometimes we need a less emotional helping hand from a provider who knows how to think about that place in between your doctor's visits to help us unearth the meaning, because we either don't understand the meaning or we over index on the meaning, and we're often as patients in the weeds. We cannot see the forest for the trees, and we're trying to, especially as overachievers, trying to control everything we can, but we may not see where, like you mentioned, we're doing more harm than good. So I think that it's very nice to say we can be more in tune. And I think there's lots of ways we can be more in tune. If you're in pain and you're trying to control, and I mean pain, any sign or symptom, you're trying to control that pain with the choices you make every single day, that's a great place to reach out and get support, because it's hard to make the connections that actually are meaningful.
It's so funny listening to this. I just got back yesterday, pretty much Sunday night at midnight from Italy for 2 weeks. So I was in
Oh,
Florence and Lucca, and it's just so fascinating to observe the lifestyle living in Lucca in an Airbnb for a week. You really kind of just feel somewhat local and just watch people. And it's so interesting to me, different countries and kind of the blue zones and how people are moving more. And we're on the 4th floor and there was no elevator, and everybody, I watched the older people there just sitting on the bench chatting, and the movement part and living a vibrant life as we get older. What do you find is an important part watching other people around the world and versus North America habits? What can we do to improve our future self and be in our prime when we're older?
yeah. So I've been in a longevity deep dive. I'm actually leading a book club where we read a book every 2 weeks, or I do. They're on a once a month schedule, and not everybody can keep up with that, but I'm doing the reading so they don't have to. And it's a 10-month program, so there's 21 books. We started with the Blue Zone, right? Really looking at what is the lexicon around this world of longevity? And the questions that I'm sitting with, Debbie, are just like, what's longevity? What's the science and technology of longevity? What's aging? What's ageism? What's death? What's dying? What's fear of death and dying? Like, where do these things intersect? And what are we looking for when we are seeking longevity? What is that? Are we running from something? Are we running towards something? Just the deeper questions that surround this booming industry of longevity. And to answer your question, it brings me right back to my work in functional nutrition. So the science and technology of aging tells us to focus on epigenetics, omics, and precision factors. And I can break that down. Those are the things I teach in full body systems at the Functional Nutrition Alliance. In the work that I'm doing in longevity, that's on my personal site, and that's more geared towards the patient and thinking differently about how we are embracing these things. Epigenetics are the factors that influence our genes. Genes are always going to be one of the roots of any sign, symptom, or diagnosis we have, but our genes aren't written in stone. We have the epigenetic factors that influence the expression of our genes, and those come down to food, movement, environment, and mindset. That's what I would think of as the soil that the root of genes lives in, the epigenetic factors, and those are going to be different for each of us. When I say food, it's quality, quantity, diversity, timing. When you go to Italy, those things are naturally baked in. They're part of the culture that people are living, when they eat, how they eat, who they eat with, where the food comes from. There's less confusion around that than we live in. So epigenetic factors, omics. We can think about our microbiome. We can think about our proteome. I like to think of that as digestion, and thinking about how from top to bottom, as you said, we support our the funnel, the tube where food meets physiology, the mechanical, the chemical, the structural, the microbial, just really thinking about that intersection for our digestion and focusing there. And then the precision factors means it's individual. What's true for you isn't true for me. And how do we embrace that? So all of my research into longevity, I'm 9 books in, nearly halfway there.
Wow.
All of my research is pointing me back towards the big question of what do we mean when we say longevity, and what are we seeking, and what are we running from?
Yeah.
Is it aging? Is it death? Is it dying? Is it ageism? And what's really masculine in that drive, and what's feminine in that drive? And I'm using those very broadly, but a lot of the science and technology is and are the tools of optimization versus the tools of stabilization. And I can tell you 2 big, easy takeaways that support longevity in the research: balance and flossing. We think it's all these like super complicated things and the supplements and the sirtuins. Flossing and balance have come up repeatedly as anchored practices that we can all work on.
Balance as in one leg, standing one leg.
Balance as in being able to catch yourself before you fall. So yeah, so you can hike, and like in Italy, going up the stairs, walking regularly, we lose that. And in so doing, we lose some of the balance that helps us to stave off some of the risk that comes with falling when we're age. And there's a bigger risk associated with it.
You know, the personal trainer side of me, I have a few clients that stayed with me from Seattle after I moved down here, and it's so interesting. Everyone seems to be traveling to Europe, and my mom is too, and she's 83. And I said, telling everyone you need to start climbing stairs, you need to walk, you're on cobblestones, they're uneven, you can't really use a cane. And if you want to explore any of the villages and even Venice, we were in there, and all these towns, you need to be able to have balance. And these stairs are super small because they're historic areas. And it's, you look at the people that live there, that's normal for them. But people here that we're so much more sedentary and we don't have stairs that way and we don't have cobblestones and uneven surfaces. So I'm telling you, you got to start training for that trip. And I was,
Exactly.
getting ready for that. It's interesting to see, like, all right, I can do walking. We did 10, 12 miles a day, just exploring. But just
Yes.
looking at people older that are not in that environment, that's going to be a challenge for a lot of people. And it's interesting, probably, I don't know if the Blue Zones book talks about that, but just
Yeah.
that movement up and down stairs is fascinating. Just everything we did, how, oh, if you're older, this is pretty tough.
Yes, absolutely. And just even practicing that becomes a longevity practice, like
Mhm.
practicing our balance, standing on one leg, going up and down the stairs, really being able to get up off the floor, like being able to, can you get up off the floor with one hand? Like, what do you need to get up off the floor?
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that there are these practices that make a big difference in how we age and how we
Mhm.
stave off the risk and vulnerability associated with aging.
Yeah.
Like, that's what longevity is, because aging increases our risk factors
Hmm.
because we are more susceptible to the diseases that are associated with age, because we've lived in a body that is experiencing entropy. There's more wear and tear over
Hmm.
time in our bodies, to our immune systems, to our metabolic systems. So we experience, to our heart, we experience entropy over time, which is the natural process of aging. And
Hmm.
what we can really do, we can't halt that. That is
Hmm.
just a biological truth, but we can support it so that we increase our health span over time instead of thinking just about our lifespan.
Well, that's what, for me personally, is working on what I can do middle age, as I said, to be in my prime when I'm 80, because I want to be traveling around Europe and different countries and living there for 3 months at a time. And that's kind of the life we're looking at in our future. And I need to prepare myself to
Yes.
be in the best shape mentally, physically, spiritually, and be able to do all that. But it's more looking at, to me, I keep diving into, partially because the skin changes in my face last few years, like what changes as we age, what do we produce less of that we need to make up for with nutrition and exercise and the lifestyle habits. And it sounds that you're, all the books you've been reading, are you kind of diving into why do these things happen to us and how we can take ownership of our current self to be our best self in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's been really interesting, and I just want to point out that purpose is a huge part of how we age with grace. And you saying, like, I want to be able to do XYZ when I age, or when I'm older, is a huge part of healthy aging. So knowing I want to be around for my grandchildren, I want to be able to play on the floor with whatever it is, right? So whatever it is we're looking toward, that looking forward is a huge piece of what helps us to think about what we do and where the risk reward is. There is, like I said, the word entropy and the word cascade, there is a toll that is happening on our body over time, and we can't reverse that. And I think that when we're trying to reverse that, we can slow it down. We can support doing it with grace. There's a part of me that wants to own aging. Like, what does it mean to own being an elder, to own being a crone, whatever we want to call it? How does that look as beautiful as the 30-year-old Instagram? Like, why are we so running back to when there's something really gorgeous about the opportunity to be an aging individual. I look at the story I told about my husband. He died when he was 34 years old. This
Mhm.
year, our son will be the age that my husband was when I met him. So this year, my son will be 25, and that's how old Isamu was when I met him. So this like cycle of seeing like, wow, I get to raise our son. I get to see him grow up and explore what it is that he wants to explore. This is a privilege. I want to own this privilege. So,
Mhm.
yes, a lot of the books are focused on what we can do to optimize our health span. And again, it comes back to always the basics. Like it really
Mhm.
does come back to living a life that's full and meaningful to you and nourishing your body with what it needs at that time. There's no specific recipe. Even those who are looking at different animals that age differently, whether they're
Mhm.
jellyfish or mole rats, there are different animals that age differently, and people are studying them and looking to them. But it really comes down to the core principles: fat, fiber, protein, support your metabolic health, eat the rainbow and get the phytonutrients. Like, it's not complicated. We're making it complicated because we're seeking the elixir of eternal youth, which is an
Mhm.
age old quest. We are not
Mhm.
new. We have a new name for it, but this is not a new quest. And
Mhm.
there's a part of me that wants to just say, yes, yes, I want to live a healthy life and I want to take care of myself. And wow, I am so lucky to age and to see and
Mhm.
experience. And is there a way to delight in that instead of running from it? And
Mhm.
what happens when I run from this body that I'm in as opposed to embracing it? Not the sexiest message, but I would like it to be.
Well, I love what you're saying. One thing I've said for years, what are you running to or what are you running from people that do endurance races? So with the athletic world, endurance athletes race, say Ironmans, I know people would be obsessed with doing it. And I got into thinking, okay, what drives you to do whatever habit?
Yes.
What's the real reason, underlying reason? Are you running from something you don't want to deal with as some type of addiction or trauma or whatever it might be, or what are you running to? And it's so interesting to hear you say that in a different way, that it is, really what's going on inside that drives us to do certain activities or habits,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for
behavior.
me, like on a personal front, I didn't think about aging the same way, even though I was experiencing it like we all are, until I had a different experience as a parent. And I
Mhm.
realized that my son was launched, that he no longer needed me,
Mhm.
that he was choosing me, but he no longer needed me. And what I
Mhm.
was confronted with was a change in a role that I've held on to for so
Mhm.
long that it's embedded in my cells. My being a mother, being a parent, that's like who I am. And to experience what felt like a push away or a rejection or even an abandonment in some way just because he didn't need me, which is
Mhm.
pat on the back mom, not
Yeah.
faulty mom. But it
Mhm.
took me a minute to kind of digest that and recognize that there's a role shift happening for me, and that as we age, that happens more and more. Our roles in
Mhm.
our jobs change. I was watching friends be let go at age 60, females who's hiring them again. I was watching, like, wait a minute, we can't run from the cultural perception no matter what we look like. And
Mhm.
so, is there a way to embrace a next stage? Is this a
Mhm.
transition? is this its own, period of looking forward versus holding on to what's
Hmm.
behind us?
I love that. Yeah. So what do you feel that we should be working on now in middle age? I'm 50. I just felt like I just turned 50, but suddenly I'm turning 54 this November. And that's like, where do years go by? I gotta get things going on. So what should we do middle aged? I was think recreating ourselves so we can be the our future self and visualize how we want to be living life when we're 70, 80, 90. How do we want to show up each day? What should we be doing now? What do you
Well,
think?
I'm going to answer your question from my multifaceted lens, professional lens. So, I'm a functional medicine nutritionist. I'm also a narrative medicine practitioner. For me, those two things really intersect. We are the story that we've lived, we're the soup of our internal terrain, and we are the sum of the things we do every day as our habits, right? So, I call it the story, the soup, and the skill. So, in terms of what we do, really, what's our starting point? How do you feel? What's your body going through? What are you working on? Is there a way to give yourself, your body, the support you need from yourself, to recognize what your body is asking of you, to get help externally from somebody who can fill the gaps between what's medical with what you do every day to help you understand what makes you feel different? We all have a different starting point, but I do like to think about, the different key areas: sleep and relaxation, exercise and movement, nutrition and hydration, relationships and networks, stress and resilience. All of those things are things we can just be tweaking and thinking about, and we could focus on one of those buckets at a time. Sleep is going to be critical. One of the biggest, Peter Attia in his book Outlive calls it the four horsemen. One of the four horsemen that happens as we age is neurodegeneration. Sleep is our biggest
Mhm.
way to be counteracting the impacts of neurodegeneration. So
Mhm.
it doesn't need to be all the supplements, all the, like, it can be sleep, it can be blood sugar bound, like, pick one thing. So that's what I'm going to say. Start where you are, recognize where you are, recognize what for you needs stabilization or optimization, and break it down. Stay there. It's not a sprint. It's a
Mhm.
marathon, like you would
Mhm.
probably say. In terms of like how we live our lives in a narrative sense, for me, there's really something interesting about tuning in and recognizing who we are and what lights us up.
Mhm.
And sometimes that means going back to our childhood selves and thinking about what really sparked our imagination and how do we bring more of that into our lives. I was on a podcast recently and they asked, like, if there's one thing you could do tomorrow and spend time on it, what would it be? And without skipping a beat, I was like, hip hop dancing. And they were like, whoa, like, we didn't expect you to say that. But like, there are things we crave doing,
Mhm.
and there's a
Mhm.
reason we crave doing them. So, really making the time to recognize we want to travel the world, we want more freedom. What are those things? And even if you can't have it in its biggest expression, are there moments you can introduce into your everyday that start to feed and fuel what life looks like when
Mhm.
roles shift and
Mhm.
you don't have those roles to rely on anymore?
Yeah, that's good. Deep information. I love that conversation. I think people should have that, make sure we're talking about that. If you guys are listening, maybe have that conversation with your spouse, your family members, your friends. I think it's something people are not discussing and diving into enough and really reflecting on how do I want to see myself? How do I visualize myself? As Peter Attia, I think in his book Outlive does bring that up a lot. I think maybe that's where I started thinking about, oh, yeah, at 100, what do I want to be able to do? And when my
Yes.
dad passed away, 80, I was like, that shouldn't happen. That didn't have to happen. And what did he
Right.
not do? that he could have lived a longer quality life. So I think it's important. Another area that I'm sure you're focusing on is brain health and
Yeah.
avoiding cognitive decline. I've done a lot
Hmm.
of podcasts with Martha Carlin and Dr.
Hmm.
William Davis
Hmm.
about Parkinson's and
Hmm.
Alzheimer's dementia. And that's a big fear for a lot of people as we age, because we hear it's just kind of, oh, that's going to happen. Everyone gets that. So what have you dealt with? And it asked you this in advance, but what are your thoughts on how to improve our brain health as we age, as you mentioned a little bit?
Yeah, so again, sleep is going to be critical. Our body's ability to detoxify is really, really important for our cognitive health, and we want to stave off that neurodegeneration. And I think
Mm-hmm.
we, again, are looking for the supplements and all the things, but that sleep is going to be key. Our metabolic health is also really important. So, really thinking about how we bring a full perspective to the notion of neurodegeneration or cognitive health. Dr. Dale Bredesen, who's one of the foremost researchers in the realm of Alzheimer's and has come up with the Bredesen protocol, he calls it the 36 holes in the roof. And this goes back to my concept of things being multifactorial. So he's identified 36 physiological pathways that can, when they add up in at least half of them, lead to declines in cognitive health. And they really do come back to the management that we can all do. I'll list it again: sleep and relaxation, exercise and movement, nutrition and hydration, stress and resilience, relationships and networks. They all fall into those buckets. And there's ways that even if we don't understand the complexity of the physiological pathway leading to that branch of neurodegeneration, when we come back to the practices and we fortify at that level, that's where we're going to stave off as much as we possibly can through dietary and lifestyle factors the fear we have of those four horsemen, which are related to heart disease, metabolic disorder, cognitive health, and immune dysfunction, cancer. So those are the areas that tend to compound as we age because of that entropy, because the body isn't as good at fighting off or dealing with the bucket of insults that we've experienced over time. So instead of going top down, neurodegeneration, cognitive decline, cancer, how do I deal with that and stave that off? We can go bottom up. How do I support a life that gives me the best fighting chance I can have? There's no promises here. Again, my husband was 30 when he was diagnosed with a brain tumor, he's 31, died at 34, right? So there's no promises in what we do. It's not about being perfect or getting a guarantee. It's about placing more in the bank account that has the opportunity to support us for that healthier lifespan. And again, with cognitive decline, sleep, nutrition that gives you a variety of
Mm-hmm.
nutrients, metabolic health, meaning you're managing your blood sugar balance. Those are key factors to be able to stave off the biggest impacts of that neurodegeneration.
Mm-hmm. So just hearing you, I kind of have the answer you might say. So what would you say is the number one thing people should start with?
Um, Sleep.
That's what I thought. So, because you said it a few times, so people didn't get that. Number one thing you should be working on is optimizing your sleep and your sleep
Yeah.
hygiene routine to
Yes.
get quality sleep. So it's not just being in bed, but we want to get good sleep. And I see you wearing an Aura
I
ring,
am
I think,
ringing my
on there.
Oura ring.
How have you found it to optimize your own sleep and helping clients?
Yeah, I think so. We have a sleep assessment that we use at the Functional Nutrition Alliance because sleep is a big category, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's different ways we have to be uncovering what do you mean by sleep. So we need to first assess what is your experience with sleep. Are you falling asleep? Are you staying asleep? Are you waking up feeling rested? Are you waking up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom? What happens when you get back in bed? All of those those questions help us to be more specific with our interventions. So I'm going to think of it as tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So tier 1 is our sleep hygiene, like you mentioned. Like, how do we have a bedtime that is consistent, that is restful, that's a dark, cool room? Like, what are the environmental factors that we can do to support sleep? Not a lot of electronics around your head. Like, how do we clean up? And I do have some articles on the Functional Nutrition Alliance website that talk about these different tiers too. So really thinking about tier 1 is your environment. Does anything change when I change my environment and my habit within my environment? So really looking at doing what I call catching the wave. Like, when your body is tired, you're actually going to sleep. You're not pushing past it like a lot of us do, to stay up and be with our partner or have alone time or whatever. That's when I'm most creative. I hear all the stories, right? But how do we catch that downturn and really optimize for that? Because when we do, we're going to fall asleep easier and we're going to stay asleep longer. When we bypass that downturn, and this is our cortisol going down at night, it has to climb back up in the morning to wake us up. If I miss that little window, I have a harder time falling asleep and I have a harder time staying asleep. So it's finding for yourself, do I need to back it up to find that window? So that's tier 1, environment. Tier 2 might be where you need some support. It might be magnesium. It might be making sure you have a meal that supports you with the right distance or the right lack of distance. I think this is, again, where people are trying to do it right. And they may be intermittent fasting and trying to do some plan or protocol that doesn't meet their body's needs. And so either they're eating too close to bedtime for their body and their metabolic health, or they're eating too far from bedtime for their body and their metabolic health. And so we have to get out of thinking about what's right on the paper and in the studies and in theory, and figure out what is right for our body to be able to fall asleep and stay asleep. So it means some experimentation. Tier 3 is where we get to more medical issues that might be have to do with our breathing or sleep apnea at different levels. So tier 1 and tier 2 are where we can focus. Tier 1, a lot we can do on our own. Tier 2, we can do on our own. We might need some help there too.
Mm-hmm. Great information. And we'll be sure to put everything in the link so people can head to your website and find out more. So simple shifts that we can start with improving our aging process, our future self, is starting with the sleep, as you're talking about, and learn more about that. Devices, do you think they're beneficial, the Aura Ring and different things? Because I know some people have a Whoop and an Aura and an Apple and all this stuff. When is it the right device to use for you?
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think, like, where are we stabilizing? What are we optimizing? For me, the Aura Ring is like a background information. I'm not looking at it to guide me. I'm looking at it as a quick reflection, and I'm not over indexing on it. There are things I might be working on, like my heart rate variability, and I can use it for that. But I think a lot of times when people are over indexing on their wearables, they're outsourcing again. You could wake up and feel like, I feel great today, I slept great, and then your Aura Ring tells you didn't sleep great, and then you're like, I didn't sleep great last night, but you felt great. Like, we've missed that opportunity for intuition and for tuning into how we feel in favor of something else telling us information. So there's a balance there. I like my Aura Ring, but I am very judicious about how I rely on it, and I see people over indexing on that information. So what are you doing? Why are you doing it? What are you looking to get from it? And how are you using it? So that is my recommendation with devices. I think there's a lot of hacking people are trying to do that. We can't hack our health. You can optimize your health, but you can't hack it. I'm going to just leave us with where I think we can focus with food and those three principles. So I talked about that yes, no, maybe as a third principle. Principle number one is literally fat, fiber, protein at every meal. And you're
Mhm.
going to be able to talk about optimizing for, for fitness. But I just feel like we have to think more broadly.
Mhm.
Thinking more broadly about our food versus more narrowly is where health lives. Health does not live in the narrows. It lives in the ability to have flexibility and find balance within the flexibility, like surfing. So, fat, fiber, protein, I'm not measuring, I'm not macroing. I'm just saying, how do you get fat, fiber, protein at every meal or snack to optimize your metabolic health, your energy levels? Start there as opposed to measurements and worrying about how much of everything. By the way, the evidence is divided about protein in relation to longevity. Some people
Mhm.
are going to say more, some people are going to say more is very harmful to longevity. So this is where you get to the noise of the industry.
Mhm.
So fat, fiber, protein, stop measuring, stop over indexing, in my opinion. The body has a hard time processing protein as we get older. So we need it, but not in the amounts that are the zeitgeist right now.
Mhm.
Second principle is to eat the rainbow, and eating the
Mhm.
rainbow and getting the variety of foods that we can get from the plant kingdom gives us a lot of the antioxidants that our body needs for longevity to support our immune system, as well as a lot of the fiber that we need. So a lot comes from eating the rainbow. So three easier principles as opposed to going keto or intermittent fasting or measuring your protein or
Right.
your macros. Fat, fiber, protein, eat the rainbow, yes, no, maybe list, and tune into what works for you.
I think that's great. I'm a huge believer, keep it simple, because I think so many people overcomplicate it and they listen to too much social media and podcasts and YouTube videos that they're just overwhelmed and they don't know what to do. So just going back to the basics, what you're saying is so perfect. I think teaching people those tools and not get all worked up into what food camp you're in and
Yes,
find what works best for you.
yes.
Yeah, good for you. Would you add any changes as we age? Should we focus on more or just you're kind of saying as it is, but is that for middle age and aging adults, men versus women? Any changes in there?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely going to have bigger differences in our bodies as we age for women. There's a lot of change that happens through menopause that's very significant. It's a very huge shift in life where, again, a role that we may have associated with our body is no longer a role for our body. And so, really thinking back through history and how we own that time in life and what our hormones do and don't do for us, and the fact that that's a missing piece of the puzzle, which for me doesn't mean we necessarily replace. I'm not against bioidentical hormone therapy, but I'm not unilaterally for bioidentical hormone
Mm-hmm.
therapy. It's very individual. I think it's another place where we've over indexed in an effort to try to fix what we think is broken, which may just be changing and not broken. And we
Mm-hmm.
could be unintentionally introducing things that we don't know we're introducing. Whole
Mm-hmm.
topic for another day. The body needs to be able to process hormones, and I think we're overlooking the physiological function in favor of the fix once again. But the female body is going through a lot of changes, and I think that all bodies are going through changes. All bodies are having the impacts and the insults that we've had through a lifetime. I am really interested in the female body at this stage of life and the life that women, I'm older than you, but the life that we have lived and what is a sort of precedented life for a woman our age who has done everything. The generation before had female outliers who seized the day. We are all that seized the day. We've done it all. And so I think we're a new I think we're a new generation of aging women,
Mhm.
and I'm really curious about how that manifests for us. But I would just say tune in. Like, this is our time to embrace what we've always wanted out of life and
Mhm.
stop striving and seeking for some idealized notion. It doesn't mean letting it all go to pot. There's a way to find the balance that is right for each of us that I said earlier, which is the balance between striving and surrendering,
Mhm.
embracing and trying. It's a different balance. And I
Mhm.
think it's a really lovely time to go, you know what? I'm done with that.
Mhm.
Now I get this.
Yeah, that's so great. I appreciate that. So we're focusing on what it means to be truly healthy from the inside out, how to optimize your health to be our best self in the future, to be sharp, strong, energized. Anything else you would add to that conversation today, that focus?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I think it's really tuning into our personal discernment. I think we are bombarded with more and more and more noise. And what I always like to point out is that we live in an information age, and yet more information isn't leading to more solutions for people. We
Mm.
have an increased rate of people who are sick and tired and not getting better, not a decreased rate, an increased rate, while we have access to more information. When my husband was diagnosed in 2000, there was no nutrition on the web. I was looking to Andrew Weil, like nothing existed. And when I look back and see what has happened over time, but also the rates of chronic illness rising, I see there's a supply demand equation that doesn't make sense. So, what I want to remind everybody is to use your discernment when you see that cream, that elixir, that promise, that guru, that young and beautiful or filtered person on social media. What are you attracted to? What are you wanting of
Mhm.
that? Take a
Mhm.
pause and think about what it is you're seeking. It might exist in your cupboard, in your pantry, in your medicine cabinet already, in the creams you have. Just take a beat, because I think
Mhm.
we're very reactive to all the noise that we're exposed to.
I love that. I agree. So, what, to summarize, what is your mission?
Ooh, that's a big question. I think that right now my mission, I would say, is to revitalize uh, the understanding of our story in our health outcomes.
Mm.
Meaning we know ourselves in order to understand how we better move towards what we're looking for. And I think we lost it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. Well, amazing, great information, good conversation. Hopefully everyone enjoyed this and got you thinking, what do I feel? What do I think about my future self?
That's what I do.
Yeah, that's perfect. Where can people learn more? We'll put all the links below, but if you want to share where to find you and learn more about your programs.
Yeah, so on all the platforms, you can find me at Andrea Nakayama, and I'm sure we'll include that. That'll lead you
Mhm.
back to the Functional Nutrition Alliance, where I train providers. What I do at andreanakayama.com and on all those sites is more in this intersection of functional medicine, narrative medicine, longevity, this kind of evolving
Mhm.
stance that I'm exploring that is a deeper conversation.
Yeah, no, that's why I feel that I'm in the same place and just, having these deep conversations, especially after observing people from around the world. In Italy, I get people from all parts of the world, and so a lot of Japanese, and I just love watching everyone. And it's
Yes.
really a place in Florence, especially get all the tourists in Pisa and watch how people move and live life and how you look at people that are 80, 90 years old and how they are doing and what we can do to be that way. So
Yes.
I'm on a similar mission. Amazing. Well, thank you for your time today, and I look forward to following up with you. I'd love to sign up for that full body systems program
Mhm.
was always on my list to do. So you're good reminder, as I always love
Oh, good. I
a
love
new
it.
program every year because it's an ongoing journey to continue
Yes.
learning and refresh your brain of
Yes.
everything too.
Love it.
So okay, well, thanks so much, and we'll put this up soon so everyone can learn more and share with others.
Thank you, Debbie.